So it's May 4th, 1799.
Mm-hmm.
And the air inside this fortress city, Seringapatam, is just, it's thick with gunpowder and dust. Plus, the oppressive heat of May in South India.
Right. It's miserable conditions.
Yeah. And the heavy stone walls have literally just collapsed under this relentless artillery fire. Outside, you've got 60,000 British-led troops just pouring through the breach, bayonets fixed.
And it's total chaos.
Complete chaos. And the defending ruler is cornered. His French military advisors are there, and they're practically begging him to slip away through a secret passage.
Like, just live to fight another day.
Exactly. Just survive. But he draws his sword, looks at them, and famously declares, better to live one day as a tiger than 1,000 years as a sheep.
Wow.
And then he just charges headlong into the rubble, dying in hand-to-hand combat right there at the Holy Gateway.
And, I mean, that cinematic, just violently defiant end, it wasn't just the death of a king. It basically removed the single greatest technological and military obstacle to the British Empire's total domination of the Indian subcontinent.
Which is wild. Welcome to this deep dive, by the way. Today, for all of you listening, we are taking a massive stack of historical records, biographies, and some really highly contested accounts to piece together the story of Tipu Sultan.
The Tiger of Mysore.
The Tiger of Mysore, exactly. We are looking at a man who he pioneered mass rocket artillery, struck up an actual pen-pal alliance with Napoleon Bonaparte.
It still blows my mind.
I know, right? And he left behind a legacy that is so polarizing that modern politicians today still fiercely debate his true nature. So our mission today is to uncover the man behind the myth.
Yeah, and to really understand how he became such a nightmare for the British, we kind of have to look at the crucible he was raised in.
Okay, set the scene for us.
So Tipu wasn't born into some peaceful ancient dynasty, He was born in 1751 to Haider Ali. And Haider Ali was this brilliant, self-made military officer who basically maneuvered his way into becoming the de facto ruler of the Kingdom of Mysore.
Right, so from day one, there's this intense pressure to legitimize the family's rule.
Exactly. His father made sure his education was relentless. I mean, his native tongue was Urdu, but he had specialized tutors drilling him in Persian, Arabic, Islamic jurisprudence.
And military tactics too, right?
Oh, absolutely. He was taught modern military tactics by French officers, but he wasn't just learning theory from a chalkboard.
Right.
He was applying it immediately on the battlefield. At just 15 years old, he actually accompanied his father into the First Anglo-Mysore War against the British.
Wait, 15?
Yeah, 15. And by 16, he was already commanding his own cavalry corps.
See, okay, this is where the historical accounts always trip me up a bit, because when we hear about a 16-year-old royal commanding an army, my modern assumption is
that it's ceremonial.
Exactly. You picture some teenager, in fancy armor, sitting on a hill way behind the lines, while the actual generals do the real work, like a royal child star, basically.
Right.
Was he genuinely making tactical decisions, or was he just a mascot for his father's army?
I mean, it's a fair question, but the geopolitical reality of 18th century India just didn't allow for mascots.
Really?
Yeah. The British East India Company was rapidly expanding from the coast. The Maratha Empire was pushing down from the north. Mysore was basically surrounded by existential threats.
So they didn't have the luxury of coddling him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Haider Ali needed a trusted lieutenant. Tipu was effectively a working general and a diplomat from his teenage years. He was organizing supply lines, leading flanking maneuvers. Yeah, and negotiating treaties. He had to be hardened immediately because survival demanded it.
And he definitely embraced that hardened persona, especially with his branding. I mean, the origins of his nickname, the Tiger of Mysore, it sounds almost mythological.
It really does.
The primary sources detail this hunting trip, where a young Tipu and a French friend are ambushed in the forest by a tiger. And the tiger just kills the Frenchman instantly.
All right.
Tipu's flintlock gun jams. He tries to draw his dagger, but it falls out of his reach. Okay. So as this massive predator leaps at him, he drops to the ground, grabs the blade, and literally kills the tiger in hand-to-hand combat.
Which is how he earned the title Sher-e-Mysore.
Yeah, Tiger of Mysore.
And what's fascinating is how much he internalized that identity. He adopted the tiger motif. It was called a babri for the entire state apparatus.
Like a logo.
Basically, yeah. Tiger stripes were woven into his soldiers' uniforms. They were engraved onto his cannons, stamped into the hilts of his swords. It was a psychological tool as much as an aesthetic one.
But I mean, having a terrifying nickname and being brave doesn't make you a geopolitical superpower.
No, it doesn't.
What made him a global threat was his ability to innovate. And that brings us to the tech, the Mysorean rockets.
Oh, this is the best part. His father had experimented with rocketry, but Tipu industrialized it. He created these specialized, highly trained rocket artillery brigades called kushuns.
Okay.
And he eventually deployed up to 5,000 rocketeers at a time.
5,000. See, a lot of overviews compare this to, like, a local power developing a nuclear bomb today. But looking at the mechanics, that analogy feels a bit off to me.
How so?
Well, nuclear weapons are strategic deterrents, right? You build them hoping you never actually have to use them.
Right, yeah.
Tipu's rockets were tactical, everyday battlefield weapons. To me, it feels more like a modern-day local militia suddenly developing their own fleet of precision-guided military drones.
Ah, that's a great comparison.
Right. It completely neutralized the traditional infantry lines that the British relied on. But I want to unpack this. How did an 18th century Indian kingdom out-innovate the British military-industrial complex?
It came down to one brilliant leap in metallurgy. So before Tipu, military rockets globally were basically just large fireworks. They used cardboard or bamboo tubes to hold the gunpowder, but because those materials were weak, you couldn't pack the gunpowder tightly. If you did, the tube would just burst the moment you lit the fuse.
Got it. So less pressure meant less range.
Exactly. Less range, less power.
So they were more of a loud psychological nuisance than a lethal weapon before this.
Precisely. But Tipu's engineers solved this by replacing the bamboo with soft hammered iron.
Oh, wow. Iron casing.
Yeah, because iron can withstand immense internal pressure. This meant they could pack the gunpowder incredibly tightly, creating a massive, sustained propulsive force.
Which translates directly to range.
Right.
The sources note these iron-cased rockets could travel up to 2 kilometers.
2 kilometers.
Yeah.
And they carried twin-sharpened sword blades mounted to the sides.
That is terrifying.
Imagine thousands of these flying at your infantry line simultaneously. And, they didn't have modern stabilizing fins, so their flight paths were deliberately erratic.
Oh, so they weren't flying straight.
No. They would hit the ground, bounce, spin chaotically, and just tear through densely packed ranks of soldiers and cavalry horses. In battles like Pallalur, British accounts describe absolute devastation. Their traditional battle squares were broken before they could even fire a musket volley.
That is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it shocked the British so profoundly that decades later, after they finally defeated Tipu, they packed up hundreds of these captured rockets.
Shipped them right back to London.
Yeah, the Royal Arsenal, and reverse-engineered them. The famous British Congreve rockets used in the Napoleonic Wars. And, fun fact, the ones mentioned in the American national anthem, the rocket's red glare.
Wait, really?
Yes. Those are direct technological descendants of Tipu's iron tubes.
That's incredible. But to build an advanced weapons program like that, you need massive sustained capital. You need ironworks, gunpowder mills, specialized labor.
Right, they aren't paying for that with pocket change.
Exactly. And this is where Tipu's genius for statecraft really shines. He wasn't just a military commander, he was an aggressive economic centralizer. Under his rule, Mysore's economy peaked, actually overtaking the incredibly wealthy Bengal Suba to become India's dominant economic power.
Yeah, the numbers here are wild. The historical estimates note that the average income in Mysore at this time was 5 times higher than the subsistence level.
For the 18th century, that is an astonishing standard of living.
How did he engineer that kind of wealth while constantly fighting wars?
By essentially running the kingdom like a massive state capitalist enterprise.
Yeah.
He established a state monopoly on key high-value export stuff like sandalwood, pepper, and cardamom.
So he just cut out the middlemen.
Completely. He traded directly with foreign merchants and kept the profits for the state treasury. But he didn't just extract resources. He invested in high-value manufacturing. Like, he noticed the global demand for silk, so he sent experts to Bengal to study their cultivation methods.
Oh, that's smart.
Brought that knowledge back and kickstarted the Mysore silk industry, which, by the way, is still world famous today.
He was aggressively networking for economic intelligence. The sources mention he brought in foreign experts, too. Like, he learned how to build copper-bottomed ships from a French admiral to prevent hull rot in his navy.
Yeah, he was always learning.
He patronized local arts, like the Channapatna wooden toy industry. He even laid the foundational surveys for the massive KRS dam on the Kaveri River to revolutionize local agriculture. He really understood that a strong military is impossible without a highly productive economy backing it up.
And that exact combination Unprecedented wealth and advanced artillery made him a massive target.
Right.
The British East India Company recognized that if they didn't take him out, his economic engine would eventually fund an army large enough to push them off the subcontinent entirely.
And Tipu knew this too.
Oh, he absolutely knew, which is why he realized he couldn't fight them alone forever. He had to take his foreign policy global.
Yeah, he launched one of the most ambitious diplomatic campaigns of the era. He sent embassies to the Ottoman Empire in Constantinople, asking the Sultan for military assistance. He reached out to Persia. He even received ambassadors from Qing Dynasty China.
But his most famous and definitely his most dangerous alliance was with France. I know you were looking at the source material regarding this connection, and it just reads like alternate history fiction.
It really does. The connection to Napoleon Bonaparte is mind-bending. The historical records explicitly state that Napoleon invaded Egypt in 1798, partly to establish a land route to India.
Right.
Specifically to join forces with Tipu Sultan.
It's one of history's wildest realities. Napoleon literally wrote to the French Directory outlining his master plan. He was going to conquer Egypt, secure the Red Sea, and launch a force of 15,000 elite French troops to India to join Tipu Sahib and crush the English.
Wait, okay, let's pause here. Because the logistics of that sound completely unhinged for the 1790s.
Very ambitious, yeah.
Napoleon was going to march 15,000 troops across the Middle East, put them on boats in the Red Sea, sail across the Arabian Sea, and just land in South India. Was this an actual actionable military strategy, or was Napoleon just, making grandiose promises to keep the British panicked and distracted?
It was kind of a mix of both, honestly, but Napoleon was entirely serious about the attempt. You have to remember, France and Britain were locked in a global struggle for supremacy, and India was rapidly becoming the crown jewel of British wealth.
Right.
If France could disrupt that, they could bankrupt the British war machine in Europe. Napoleon even wrote a personal letter to Tipu confirming his imminent arrival. But the letter was intercepted by a British spy in Muscat.
Wow. The interception of that letter is the ultimate smoking gun. And Tipu was leaning hard into this French connection at home, too. There are claims in the sources that he allowed French soldiers in his service to establish a Jacobin club, the radical political group of the French Revolution, right, in his capital.
Yeah, they supposedly planted a liberty tree and addressed him as Citizen Tipu.
Citizen Tipu.
I know. Historians still debate how much of that was genuine ideological alignment versus, pragmatic theater. I mean, Tipu was an absolute monarch. He wasn't about to hand over power to a democratic republic.
Definitely not.
But he knew that to keep French military advisors and engineers loyal, he had to speak their revolutionary language. However, for the British Governor-General, Lord Wellesley, the optics alone were terrifying. Tipu wasn't just a local Indian king anymore.
He was the eastern linchpin in a global war against France.
Exactly, and they used that intercepted letter as the absolute justification to just wipe Mysore off the map.
Which brings us to the most complex part of his legacy. And for you listening, we need to be really clear here. We are just reporting what the historical sources say. We aren't taking a side.
Right. It's crucial to remain impartial because the records present two completely incompatible versions of the same man, especially regarding his religious policies.
Yeah, it's stark. On one page, you have a ruler generously funding Hindu temples. Turn the page, and you have a conqueror systematically massacring rival communities. How do we intellectually reconcile these records?
It requires stripping away modern political lenses and just looking at how 18th century statecraft actually functioned. On a personal level, Tipu was a devout Muslim. He instituted strict moral codes, banning the sale of liquor and cannabis.
Okay.
He overhauled his administration's calendar and issued coinage named after Islamic figures and planets.
Yet within his own administration, he appointed Hindus to incredibly powerful positions. Like his chief minister, the Dewan, was a Hindu named Pranaya.
Exactly.
And we have documented records of Tipu giving land grants, silver and jewelry to over 156 Hindu temples.
And the most striking example of this is his relationship with the Sringeri monastery. In 1791, a Maratha army, which, keep in mind, was a Hindu empire fighting against Tipu, raided the monastery. They killed civilians, plundered the sacred matha, and committed awful atrocities. The head of the monastery wrote to Tipu Sultan for help, and Tipu was reportedly furious.
Wow.
He immediately sent funds to rebuild the temple, provided military protection, and maintained this deeply respectful correspondence with the Swami for years.
So you see that, and the narrative of a tolerant, pluralistic ruler seems completely locked in. But then you look at his military campaigns outside his core territory, and the evidence of brutal persecution is undeniable.
Yeah, it's very dark.
The sources detail the massacre of over 1,200 Iyengar Brahmins in the town of Melkote, and that wound is so deep that the town still refuses to celebrate the festival of Deepavali today, in mourning for that event.
And in places like Coorg and Malabar, his armies engaged in mass deportations and forced conversions. He ordered the capture of up to 40,000 Kodabas in Coorg, forcing them to convert to Islam.
That's a staggering number.
It is. He also destroyed Christian churches in Mangalore, suspecting the local Catholics of acting as a fifth column for the British, and imprisoned thousands of them under brutal conditions.
It's like a historical Rorschach test. But historians like Irfan Habib point out that navigating this requires understanding the source material itself, right?
That's a really important point.
A lot of the most gruesome, serialized accounts of Tipu's cruelties were originally written by early British authors, men like Mark Wilkes and James Kirkpatrick.
Exactly. These were colonial administrators who actively fought against Tipu. They had a vested interest in painting him as a one-dimensional, barbaric fanatic.
Right, because if he was a monster, then the British conquest wasn't an imperial land grab.
It was a liberation. They often exaggerated numbers and framed political retribution purely as religious zealotry to, justify their own expanding empire.
But we can't dismiss the cultural buffoonery of places like Coorg or Melkote either. The violence happened. The consensus seems to be that Tipu was a hyper-pragmatic, often ruthless monarch. When a community or a temple submitted to his authority like Seringapatam, he was a generous, fiercely protective patron.
Yes.
But when a community rebelled or allied with his enemies, like the Kodabas or the Nairs, his retribution was total. He often weaponized religion as a tool of state terror to break their political identity. He used faith to protect, and he used it to punish.
And it was that absolute, uncompromising ruthlessness combined with his wealth and those French connections that finally brought the full weight of the British Empire down on it.
The end game.
Yeah. In 1799, the Fourth Anglo-Mysore War began, and the British didn't take any chances this time. They mobilized a massive coalition.
3 separate armies converged on his capital of Seringapatam. We're talking over 60,000 troops, including regiments led by young Arthur Wellesley.
The guy who would eventually become the Duke of Wellington and defeat Napoleon at Waterloo.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Tipu was vastly outnumbered, holding the fort with only about 30,000 men.
But Seringapatam was a heavily fortified island city. With those massive stone walls and his iron-cased rocket brigades raining fire from the parapets, a direct siege was incredibly costly for the British.
He had the defensive advantage.
Yeah, Tipu could have dragged the war out for months, just waiting for the monsoon rains to destroy the British supply lines.
He couldn't out-innovate internal betrayal. The sources show that the British artillery didn't win that siege alone. Several of Tipu's own top commanders, including his minister Mir Sadiq, secretly conspired with the British.
They sabotaged the defense from the inside.
Yeah. They withheld pay to demoralize the troops and intentionally weakened specific sectors of the wall. They were practically guiding the British artillery on exactly where to strike.
And when the breach was finally made on May 4th, it was a sudden, catastrophic collapse of the defense.
Which brings us back to that visceral scene at the Hali Gateway.
His advisors pleaded with him to escape, to use the secret passage. But surrender wasn't in his vocabulary. His uncompromising nature was the source of his immense power, but it was also his fatal flaw.
It's a tragic irony. When British General George Harris found his body in the rubble, he reportedly stood over him and shouted, "Now India is ours."
The relief in Britain was so intense, they actually declared a public holiday.
A public holiday.
Yeah. They stripped his palace of its wealth. They took his famous sword, which interestingly made its way back to India decades later via an auction in 2004.
Oh, wow.
And they looted this incredibly eerie mechanical wooden toy called Tipu's Tiger.
Oh, I read about this.
It's a life-sized automaton of a tiger mauling a British soldier, complete with a built-in organ that simulates the soldier's screams.
That is so morbid.
You can still see it in the Victoria and Albert Museum in London today. It just shows how deeply he hated them and how deeply he terrified them.
So his physical kingdom was dismantled, but his historical shadow only grew. During the Indian independence movement, leaders like Subhas Chandra Bose resurrected his image as a pioneering anti-colonial freedom fighter. He's even depicted in the original manuscript of the Indian Constitution.
And over in Pakistan, he's celebrated as a symbol of Islamic resistance. They even named naval warships, like the PNS Tipu Sultan, after him.
Yet in modern India, his legacy remains an active political battlefield. In his home state of Karnataka, political parties routinely clash over his memory.
Yeah, it's still very heated.
When one government created Tipu Sultan Jayanti to celebrate his birth, praising his technological leaps and anti-British defiance, the opposing party aggressively protested and later canceled it, pointing directly to his brutal campaigns in Kodagu and Malabar. 2 centuries later, the Tiger of Mysore refuses to rest quietly.
He's a stark reminder that history is rarely simple. It's built by deeply flawed, complex visionaries who leave scars just as often as they leave innovations.
Which leaves us with a final what if for you to ponder. Go back to that intercepted letter in Muscat.
Oh, man.
What if that British spy had been just a week too late? What if Napoleon's letter had reached Seringapatam and a hardened French expeditionary force had somehow managed to land on the coast and link up with Tipu's 5,000 iron-case rocket brigades?
It would have changed everything.
Could the British Empire have been permanently shattered in India before the 19th century even began? How radically different would the map of the modern world look today? History hangs by a thread, and sometimes it's severed by the stroke of a sword. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. See you next time.